All right, welcome to the Read Your Keys podcast. My name is Joel Lopez. If you're listening on iTunes, please go ahead and subscribe on iTunes and leave a comment if you're really enjoying this. On Spotify, please go ahead and follow. Today, my guest is Mr. Bill Masur. He is teaching men how to build their character. He is the author of the book of Uncomfortable Truths, A Guide to Navigating the Modern World. You can find him on Twitter at Eternal in Mind. Bill, welcome to the show today, man.
Thanks for having me, Joel. I'm happy to be here.
So, I was telling you before we hopped on that Jack Peach had said that, hey, Bill would be a great guy to speak to, and I checked out the book of Uncomfortable Truths, and I thought it was really interesting the way that you had laid that out. So. What was your I don't know, how did you get all those thoughts? Because there's a lot of content in there, and you cover, I didn't get to finish it, but from the range that you have on there, it covers quite a bit. So where did that come from?
Yeah, well, first I want to thank Jack. Jack is awesome. So I love that man. So I appreciate him for
shout out to Jack
for the shout. Yeah, shout out to Jack for sure. Love him. The book was something I did last year. Was based on a thread that went viral. Got about the thread in total had like 7 million impressions. Went crazy.
Wow.
And I think I had the same day I appeared on Zuby's podcast. I think that sort of contributed because Zuby is huge on Twitter. And then the book itself, it's sort of me trying to piece together a lot of my thoughts on self-improvement topics, political topics, personal sort of cultural observations, and things that are maybe not unique to me, but it felt like, hey, people, if they were interested in the thread, then I should write a book about it. So I did that. So it just became a PDF that I have online, and most people jump at the occasion to write a book and get paid for it. So I did that.
yeah, no, it's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's the thought processes that are on there. Those aren't mainstream, for sure.
Yeah, and I think the interesting part, and maybe I'm just thinking about it as 2020 has, not for anything, but I think probably when I wrote that book was September. What was it? No, July or August of 2019. And I have a couple of tweets in there I think are pretty prophetic. I don't know, I'm a pretty humble guy, but I look back at it, I'm like, I literally have a tweet that says the next economic crisis will be a choice between light and dark. I wouldn't even have imagined that we'd be in the position that we're currently in. I think the world is literally teetering between chaos and order. I don't see how you can see it any other way. So, and I think I was being, even in the book, I'm a little dramatic. Like if you read I think you can go to the Gumroad page and read the first page. And I sort of say, like, civilization is at a turning point. Like we don't understand the things that actually got us to where we are, and we're about to destroy them. And what I mean by that is part of it is sort of the spiritual aspect, which comes from Christianity, and the other part is the political and economic stuff that comes from the founding fathers and from capitalism. And now this, especially this younger generation and a lot of modern politics is about hating all of those things. And if we do that, we will dive into chaos, and we're seeing it. We're seeing riots. We're seeing, like, I don't know how the 2020, for as much as I felt like I understood that we were in a mix of a crisis, has been sort of shocking. Like, I'm still shocked. We're in December, and I don't really understand. I've been trying to grasp, actually. It's funny that I was mentioning to you before that you invited me on the podcast, but, I've been trying to think through what I can do to try to bring some clarity, because I think that's probably one of my roles. Like, I think I can. I don't consider myself an overly smart person, but I think my mind is ordered enough. I have put enough time into ordering my mind, my body, my spirit,
Mm-hmm.
thoughtful enough that now I can like synthesize things.
Mm-hmm.
And the world is just really incredibly lost. And it probably in my book, yeah, I don't even think I touched. Actually, you look at my book, and the years changed things so much that a lot of those things don't even seem relevant anymore. It
I no,
doesn't. It's crazy.
I think a lot
You
of
think
them
so?
do. I think a lot of them do seem relevant. Like you had uh uh I guess like a post or a chapter or a snippet on war and like the military industrial complex, and like I've always, I was alive for 9/11 and all that. So like very much like, okay, we're going to war over there, so they don't come here. And it's like, okay. And then so we were, for the most part, we didn't have any issues here. And then, in the previous administration, I guess we had a kind of a drawdown where we pulled troops out, and then we saw that there was, terrorist activity that kind of picked up again. So it's like, oh, so we need to have troops over there then, because look at, like, we pulled them out, and look at there's this is something I've kind of noticed recently, and some things that I've kind of been thinking through on my own. And then now with this current administration, there was, it seemed like all out effort to just kind of like go and drop bombs over there. And then now we have this drawdown, but knock on wood, we haven't had any issues
Yeah.
here domestically. And then so, because in my head it was like, well, if we pull them out and then we have them here, it's like, okay, so that it makes sense to have it over there. But now with this current administration, it seems like, well, we pulled them out and we bombed them, but we're good. So do we not really have to keep playing this game that they've been playing, where it's like, okay, pull them out, send them back in, like?
Yeah. I think. Yeah, I think one thing that, I didn't vote for Trump, but I did vote in 2016. I did not vote for Trump. In 2020, I did vote for Trump. And one of the main reasons is because as much as he maybe in the wars that we're involved in, he was aggressive in them. I do sort of agree with, if you're going to be in a fight, you sort of get it over with and you're done with it. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that's pragmatic and realistic to look at.
Mm-hmm.
Now he hasn't started a new war, which I actually thought that he would. That was when he was elected. I'm fair. I would say my politics fall within like libertarian, so
Mm-hmm.
very anti-war,
Mm-hmm.
unnecessary wars. So I was really concerned, but I have to say that, yeah, he's been sort of the biggest peace candidate if you look at it in proportion
Mm-hmm.
of any of these people. So I think you're right. It is, maybe it's going to seem grim, but I think that America is being eaten by these different, they call it the military industrial complex, the pharmaceutical industrial complex. It sounds like conspiracy, but all you have to know is that it's moneyed interests in those
Mm-hmm.
particular areas that influence government and policy. It's very
Mm-hmm.
simple. Like, we know that happens with everything, with taxes,
Mm-hmm.
with we're dealing with the coronavirus. The coronavirus is the health industry scavenging.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's very clear. We have a, yeah. It's like when you're in the twilight of an empire. You got to eat off the carcass. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
pretty grim way to look at it. So I do think that Biden winning even is probably a sign that we're in for more war,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. And it's crazy. One of the things that I thought was crazy that just came out after the election is that Trump literally was trying to draw down troops, withdraw, and generals were disobeying his
Mm-hmm.
commands. Like,
Yeah.
admittedly now bragging about it in public. Like,
Mm-hmm.
these people should be put on trial for treason.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I
Yeah.
don't care. So it's it's crazy that you could actually have a president in power, and Trump calls it the deep state, whatever you want to call it, and these interests that do not get elected actually just don't even listen. So, like, what's the
Mm-hmm.
point of democracy? Like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't understand.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, I think war is right. That's like one of the oldest things that governments do to control their people, and sometimes the threats are legitimate, but
Mm-hmm.
definitely every war that we've fought in the last 20 years, seems to have very little to do with actual terrorism
Right.
and stopping that problem.
Yeah.
It probably made it worse.
You did mention, the decline of civilizations. Did you do any kind of like deep dive on like, Roman civilizations or Greek civilizations to help you to kind of see these things? Because I was a history major for a while in school, but I admit I didn't really pay that much attention. And I don't think they were really focusing on that stuff anyway. By the time I was in school, I think if you really, for the people who kind of speak like you do, you kind of do it on your own. Is that what you did?
Self-taught, and so I wouldn't say I'm some expert on Roman history, but I've done enough research to try to understand some of the patterns. I would say my point of view is heavily influenced by a lot of economic and history of the United States, history of money. I think if you look at um, the history of currencies and how governments manipulate money,
Mm-hmm.
that's where you get to the roots of everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a power that the American government has had now for over 100 years. So we don't even acknowledge it, talk about it, but actually we do, right? Bitcoin is an offshoot of that sentiment, and so is gold and silver. But so I've studied a lot. I've spent maybe probably about 10 years ago, just went crazy reading history books and probably a lot of people would describe them as right leaning or libertarian history
Mm-hmm.
books. But I came into reading them a complete liberal. Like I'm born and raised in New Jersey,
Mm-hmm.
lived in right across from Manhattan, super democratic area. That's all I believed and taught.
Mm-hmm.
I never was even given an argument around why you would be conservative or libertarian. I never even heard it until I was in college, maybe. And then it was like
Really?
in college. Oh yeah. So all of my own sort of transformation around that would happen because of my own research.
Yeah.
And then I started to understand things like, okay, here's how the economy works. And actually, when the government just goes and tries to solve things, it actually makes things worse, like as well intentioned. And so, yeah, so that was like the first part, and then the thankfully what happened to me was it changed my political views, and I would say the person that probably had the most influence was Ron Paul when he ran in 2008. Changed my political views pretty much night and day, other than being anti-war, which is what he sort of drew me in with.
Mm-hmm.
And then the years after that, once he lost and all that in 2012, 13, 14, then I started change. I realized that for me to change the political situation and stop wars and all that, I, you know, I'm probably better off fixing my own self and my own
Mm-hmm.
life
Yeah.
and all that. So I think that's why the book covers, my own political views, which came back 10 years ago, and I'm still sort of evolving. I never feel like I fully understand that.
Huh.
And then that drove me into more of, personal development, trying to understand what can I do? And actually,
Yeah.
and then that was a sort of eye-opening thing to see, right? When 2 years ago, for maybe probably most of the people in your audience don't, aren't following me or weren't following me. But 2 years ago, I threw a conference and I had like a bunch of people, big influencers, Elliot Hulse and Zuby and Ed Lattimore and Alexander, all the big people on Twitter. And I realized, and I did that by myself. And when I announced that conference, I had 900 followers.
Oh,
And
really?
yeah, I had no followers.
Wow. Wow.
And I just believed in the idea so much, and I sold it to those people, right? And then I put the work in. I recorded like 40 interviews in a matter of like, I don't know, 45 days. I went crazy. Like I was like
You
a
did like
man on fire.
were they like podcast interviews, or you just kind of sat
Yeah,
down and interviewed them?
podcasts. They were like podcast interviews. Some people recorded actual talks. It was like 75% interviews,
Sorry,
25%
was this
talk.
like a physical? Did they come
No, it
physically
was
to like a
virtual.
conference? Okay.
It was
Okay.
virtual. Yeah,
Okay.
it was called the Men of Character conference. So
Well,
I
that's
did.
innovative in itself because I think conference. I'm like, okay, where are we flying to? You got Zuby to come out, add Lattimore. I was like, man, like, hold on, well, let's talk about this because that's a hell of a sell, especially for somebody who, you know, in Twitter terms, like 900. That's like a drop in the. That's not even a drop in the sand, you know, like or a bucket, like.
Well, luckily at that point, a couple of them were already following me. I think Alexander Cortez was actually the first person of that sort of part of
Jumped
Twitter to
on.
follow me. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
or a bigger account at least. And then I found other accounts, Tanner Guzzi and Hunter Drew or Zach as his real name now. But
Uh-huh.
my point there was that I realized that through my own personal development that you could actually impact the world. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's the sad part about, the way that the 2020 is turning out in my mind. I felt like 2018, 2019, I realized, I'm like, wow, you actually order your mind. You get your, like maybe how Jordan Peterson said, you get your house in
Mm-hmm.
order. You
Clean your
clean
room.
your room. You actually can influence the world with it especially through social media. And the
Mm-hmm.
fact that this generation is like throwing a tantrum, because that's what I compare it to. For you to go and burn down people's businesses and do
Mm-hmm.
all this ridiculous stuff and try to claim victim in this country, it's disgraceful. It's like I don't know. I can't mince words. It's just
Mm-hmm.
what is it like I. Yeah, I'm actually distraught because the sad part is that if they put that effort, that same effort and energy into improving themselves and fixing their own things,
Mm-hmm.
even the obstacles that they face, right? Like all the people on Twitter, right, that you see have grown and grown huge businesses. Chris Johnson was in my conference when he was selling
Mm-hmm.
watches. This guy made $184,000 two 3 days ago on one
Yeah,
day on Twitter,
from
on
Black
Twitter
Friday.
and
Yeah,
Instagram. Yeah,
it's crazy.
like he did that in 3 years. Now, obviously, he's a super talented,
Right.
ambitious guy. But my point is that I don't. I think he would agree to this, right? When we talked in my conference, he's not some extra smart dude. He's just somebody who just deals in reality.
Mm-hmm.
And he's not willing to believe somebody's narrative. So that's the sad part to me is that I feel like the world was actually I actually work in technology. So actually understanding the point that we're at in technology and understanding that how blessed we are to live in America
Mm-hmm.
and understanding that if you actually ordered your own life, that everything that you actually desire, you could get. And
Mm-hmm.
not that you just desire, but the thing that the world actually needs from you if you ordered yourself. And that was what I was doing when I made
Mm-hmm.
that conference. And I think it's what I do, as I'm on Twitter. It's like I try to draw out of myself what I think I should be contributing to
Mm-hmm.
the world. And if we all did that, we wouldn't have all these problems. It's really sort of sad.
What do you think that is like that fundamental like for me like for somebody to go and just write and destroy somebody's business like what is like the root cause that we go there, right? Because you can kind of get from like a fundamental broken heart to all the way up to like, okay, I had my heart broken, so I made all these decisions, and now I have this ideology that says I can tear stuff down and it's a-okay. Like I think in my mind fundamentally I think that's somebody who is ungrateful, like that like.
Problem if you do that. You have like a literal psychological problem, in my opinion. And I think there's multiple reasons, right? I think the state of the way that people are raised, right? They
Mm-hmm.
don't. They're missing important parts of relationships with their own parents,
Mm-hmm.
especially with fathers, but with even
Mm-hmm.
with mothers, like where they're being raised by what they hear in school, they're being
Right.
raised by what they hear on television.
Mm-hmm.
Those things won't lead you down the right path. They're being told that they're entitled to these things. I
Mm-hmm.
was someone who was super entitled. Now I went to college, but I left college thinking that the world should just make me a CEO. Like I was
Mm-hmm.
literally like like I wouldn't say that was psychological, but I was entitled,
Right.
spoiled, and the only way that I got rid of that was actually by eating shit.
Mm-hmm.
And you wouldn't understand how grateful I am that I got to do that. Now, I put my people that I know and family through a little bit of pain that probably I wish I hadn't because I
Uh-huh.
was struggling. but I really don't see how else I could have dealt with it, with other than having to realize, hey, you know what? You have a college degree, but you don't actually have any real skills. Like
No.
I got a business degree, and I knew nothing. Couldn't
Yeah.
sell a thing. Couldn't
Hmm.
convince anybody. Couldn't actually produce anything of value.
Hmm.
Couldn't write a sales page. Couldn't.
Yeah.
So it was a fantasy. Now so my point is, I think that people, it's much easier to tell people, hey, someone else is to blame for your current condition. And then you're going to believe that. And I also think that at the
Well,
root of it
especially
is
because
a lot of
you took the
envy
steps
too.
that everybody said that you were supposed to do to get the thing, right? Like, hey, you go to school, you get good grades, you go to college, you get a degree. You did the things, and then if it
Well,
doesn't work out, then you can't look at yourself. It's like, well, I did what you told me to do, and it didn't work. So who am I going to blame?
so society, you're right. Society in a way has lied to them, right? 100%. I thought, myself, oh, I got the college degree, I'm going to be set. And I got out of
Hmm.
college and I had 6 figures of debt. And I was like, then I started paying those monthly bills. And they're like, oh, you're going to pay this for 30 years. I'm like, this is a scam, dude. This is an
Yeah.
absolute scam.
What year
So
was this? Around what time was it when
I
you left?
graduated in 2001.
Okay.
Right? Is that right? No, sorry. 2006. Yes, 2001 was high school.
So
2006.
right, right before
Right before the
the
financial
bubble,
crisis. Yeah.
yeah, housing
Yeah.
crash, yeah.
Yep. But I think the other root cause is envy. I think that in America, because we have made wealth our god, every person thinks that they're entitled to that position, and I think it's sad. Here's the sad part that I realized: I have literally turned down opportunities where I would make more money in order to not compromise my own conscience. And I
Hmm.
am I'm poorer today because of those things, but wealthier in the only way that actually matters spiritually. And
Hmm.
the fact that these people, that no one was a parent that could tell them that this is reality, that they look at all these rich celebrities and think that of course money helps you live a more
Hmm.
comfortable life, but tell me how many of those rich people are literally on drugs, depressed. Like, this
Yeah.
is a fantasy that what you're envious of is not the path to your fulfillment. Like, I'm sorry to tell you, it's not that
Mm.
simple. So we have an envy of financial means in this country, and it's sad. Like,
Yeah.
I have had much more fulfillment from the things that I have gained spiritually in my life than the things that I
Hmm.
gained financially.
Yeah.
Now, maybe I could say that from a point of privilege because I live with, I've worked hard for where I'm at in my career, but um, people they doubt what, when you go and you burn down that store, so you've actually harmed yourself more than you've harmed that business
Yeah.
owner.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you did harm the
Your own
business.
conscience. You did harm
Yeah.
of course,
Yeah.
but you have stained your own integrity. Like, that's still on your conscience. You could be rationalizing
Yeah.
however you think you're justified in doing that. You're not going to a good place. You're not.
Well,
It's not
and
good
then
energy.
so yeah, like I agree on that point, but then the
Yeah.
point is like you just burned down the store. What are the odds that the next store is going to come in and build a business? Well, now you've robbed
Oh
everybody else
yeah.
the opportunity of the business that's going to come back. Like I know if I was a store owner, it's like, hey, they burned my stuff down. Like, if I'm going to rebuild, it's going to take a lot of effort. Am I going to really build it in the same location that allowed my
Oh,
original business?
100%.
It's like I'm gonna take my business elsewhere. It's like, hey, like I don't want to go where my family is going to be in danger, where my property is going to be in danger. I mean, we're seeing people flee these areas, and rightfully so. Like I can't imagine that people don't understand. Like a business is just not a place to make money. It's like people's hopes and dreams. Like they're trying to create a service, but there's this um idea that goes around that they're all greedy. It's like, yeah, you want to make money, of course you want to make money. You don't go to work and not expect to get paid, like of course you do. But like a person who starts a business, like there was an idea there that they were like so passionate about that they'll say, hey, let's go out and try this. It's like, and you burnt that down. Like it's not cliche to say that's their hopes and dreams that you're dealing with.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Maybe I'm being a little over the top saying that, but I guess what I meant is the person doing that is hurting themselves spiritually
Hmm.
more than that person who they're harming spirit. Because
Oh
now, but you're
yeah.
right though,
Yeah.
economically, and yes, no, it's one of the, you know, this whole idea that property, that all human lives over property, the level of ignorance that you have to believe that is true. It's so simple. It's the idea of a child. If
Hmm.
you don't understand the importance of property to human peace and progress and civilization, you have the education of a child.
Hmm.
You're a child on a tantrum. Property is literally life embodied because
Hmm.
it's an extension of it. And if
Hmm.
you can't protect that, you can't protect your own life. That's why
Yeah.
communism kills people. I
Yeah.
don't under. This is how, having gone and read all this stuff economically 10 years ago and then seeing what's occurring to this country, it's like, it doesn't make any sense to me. It's actually
Yeah.
very, so like you said, though, you have people from their own community burning, or from out of town, whatever, Americans burning down businesses, rioting, looting. Then you have the politicians shutting down things because of the coronavirus.
Yeah.
This is not how you grow a country and a
Yeah.
civilization. How you destroy it.
Yeah.
There's just no other way to put it.
Well, the thing too, Bill, is I've always heard too. It's like, well, they start off with property, right? It's like it's just property, and then it becomes people. It's just people, like the slippery slope. Like they say it's a logical fallacy, but I'm like, no, the slippery. Like I'm old enough now where I've seen the arguments for things, and they say it's ridiculous that X is going to lead to Y. You're being over the top and silly. And then what do you know? We go from X and then we end up at Y, and now Y tries to get head over to Z. It's like, no, the slippery slope is not. I don't know if you want to, and whatever epistemology or whatever you want to play that game. Like, I'm trying to deal in reality, and in reality, the slippery slope is real.
You can just look at one specific example. That couple that stood outside of their mansion and tried to defend their home.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones being prosecuted in
Mm-hmm.
America.
Yeah,
In America, it makes no sense. The laws don't justify it. So
mm-hmm.
we have as a country, we have lost. We don't understand what actually created America. We all want to get our 2 cents off of what the carcass is of America. Because we think that there's all this wealth out there. Oh, they just pay for it with insurance. You don't
Mm-hmm.
understand how fragile civilization is. You
Yeah,
don't understand how many people actually did die for it and did sacrifice years of their lives
mm-hmm.
to create this whole thing, that you're just willing to willy nilly. You've done nothing to help create it, and you don't understand it. And
Yeah,
that's the other symptom too, is that these people clearly have never created anything of value in their lives. That's the sad.
that's true.
And
That's
if
true.
you and part of being a human being, a fulfilled human being, I'm nowhere near like wealthy or whatever, but the gratification that I got out of creating my ebook, or creating the conference and doing that,
Mm-hmm.
the personal fulfillment that came from that is probably worth, in financial terms, you couldn't pay me. You
Mm-hmm.
couldn't pay me. The messages that I got from young men when I made that conference, that were like, you changed my life. Like, I cried, I laughed, I
Is that still
realized things
available
that
by any chance, Bill?
you can still get it. You probably have to ping me or you go to the site. I think you can pay for it, and you would get.
Okay.
It's like $100, $99, something like that,
Okay.
and you get 40 talks. It's probably still. I'm biased, but so the other thing I mentioned too is I might do another one. I haven't done another one because, and I could have. I have 20,000 followers, and I could have, but I didn't want to do it just for the income, the money part
Mm-hmm.
of it, right? Because it is
I
gonna do
I would
that. But
I
I
would
want to
think
do it for a reason.
I would think too, like in your mind too, like this is the way that I work too. It's like, okay, I did it this time, like now I want to do it bigger and better the next time around, and is now my ego involved? Whereas at first I wanted to do it because I wanted to help somebody. Like did I
And
did
nailed
we
it.
did we accomplish the thing that we set to accomplish? If we did, then there's kind of no reason to do it again, but there can be a reason to do it again because now we can affect more people. But am I doing it to satisfy my own ego? Because I could think that way. And plus, it's like, man, I got paid for this. Like, this is cool. Like, I want to get paid.
Yeah. No, 100. You nailed it. You literally nailed it. That's the question I want to answer. It can't be for my ego. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so I would say the last 2 years since I made that conference, and maybe the last year dealing with 2020, has been me. Now it's like, okay, I have a platform. It's 20,000 followers, not something huge, but I have people who follow me that I admire, people who have influence,
Mm-hmm.
and it's sort of crazy. you have to actually resist the urge to just tweet constantly, because
Yeah.
you imagine you can get the ears of people that you believe are important in the world. It's a pretty
Yeah.
big urge.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I resist it because I want to make sure. So literally this year has been a literal spiritual journey. Like, and and maybe, yeah. So this is like religious. I have humbled myself before God. That's been my 2020. 2020 was me realizing, okay, my instinct that God is real is it exists. The world is going nuts. I am going to go closer to Christ. That's
Hmm.
been my 2020.
Let me
And
ask you,
yeah,
did you grow up with a mom and dad? Did you grow up in a intact household?
no.
No.
So a single mother. My father was involved in my life, but he had his own alcoholism and
Okay.
uh, mental issues that he dealt with.
Uh-huh.
Good person, but yeah, my parents separated at like 12.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
my
that's
mother
just as
is
hard
like
because
huge.
that's junior high, so that's just as hard almost to kind of deal with, like, you're going from being a little boy to now, like, you're getting a little bigger, and all the things
Yeah,
that go around with it. That's pretty a challenging time. I mean, any time, right? But I don't know. I think that time is especially hard
my
for
dad my dad he passed actually about 7 years ago on 9/11, 7 years ago. But yeah, I would say that growing, one of the challenges and one of the reasons I think that I'm doing what I'm currently doing, right, or trying to help men, I think is part of has become part of my mission, um, is because I didn't have that strong father figure day to day. Like I had them
Mhm.
in family members, like my grandfather is an awesome human being. Yeah, you're like took care of, had 11 kids and took care of them, and is a principled person. He's from Colombia. I'm half Colombian, half of my father's side is German, French. Um, and I had uncles and stuff and godparents, but I didn't see that. You need to, as a boy, you need to see that every day to emulate
Mhm.
that. You need to see that. So my mother
Mhm.
did the best that she could, and probably did more than you would expect of any human being. Like, yeah, the woman couldn't love me anymore. It's like crazy. But yeah, that was definitely missing, that example, and I was a sort of a shy kid. I was very timid, shy. Um, but so then as I got out of college and all that, I started to fail.
Mhm.
Now those school, you could get away with having some of those deficiencies because it's fiction.
Right.
But and even in school, you might not get away with it because you could get bullied and all that. But luckily enough, I was sort of a clown and funny, and could make friends. That never happened. But I still never I think a lot of people that are 20 in their 20s, they never have this time where they're like, oh, I feel like an adult now. And I would say
Mhm.
if you feel like that, you're actually right. You're not an adult. If you have that concern, it's because you haven't actually done the things
Mhm.
that you need to do, and there's things that you should do as a man, and there's things that as a woman. And I know that because the thing when I've done more things to get my health in order, make myself stronger, to learn self defense, to be a better father, to be a better husband, to be a better provider. These things have made me feel more me.
Mhm.
So I don't need any psychologist or book to tell me that. So,
Right.
but all that I sort of had to learn, and I used the internet, and I used books, and I used a lot of thinking about like, and then this year, what completed it, what actually healed whatever was, had been left with my father, or the gap, was the actual father, the
Mhm.
father.
Mhm.
That then when you understand that pattern, I'm telling you that it's a different love. Like this is what this world is actually missing. There's
Yeah.
the Greeks, I think, right? The Greeks had a word for the love of God, agape. We don't have
Agape.
different words for it. It is
Mhm.
different.
Mhm.
And if you and so I've healed my lineage of right of my father and the father. It's fully healed. I understand that. I forgive my father for whatever.
Mhm.
He had his own demons that he was dealing with. And the world is you ask, how could these people be out there committing violence? Because they're disconnected from the Father.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
on a spiritual level, they are disconnected from the Father. You want to create justice on earth. God he already died on the cross. Justice already happened.
Yeah.
You're looking at the material uh, existence of your own life when actually your life is way beyond that.
Hmm.
We're promised eternal happiness with Christ. If this sounds overly religious, I don't care. I was never religious. I was never until about 2 years ago,
Oh,
or three,
it's
two,
that
3 years ago.
it's that recent, huh?
Yeah, I was raised Catholic by my mother, and my mother's super religious, but I never, whatever you want to say, was a believer, right? I,
Uh-huh.
I was like, if you would ask me, I would say I don't know. You couldn't prove it. Yeah, this
Hmm.
stupid little quip that people have. Oh, you can't
Right.
prove it.
Yeah.
Real clever. You can't prove it. Yeah,
I can't pull up my ruler and measure God, so he doesn't
yeah,
exist.
yeah. It's just a very it's symptomatic of a people that they miss. Actually, there's what you see on the surface. There's all this technology, all these things that we have. There's a spiritual dimension. You want to know why our ancestors understood it? Because they weren't distracted by all this bullshit.
Hmm.
That's why they understood it, and
Hmm.
because they actually suffered. So then they
Hmm.
had to, because when you suffer, you're drawn to him. If you
Yeah.
acknowledge. So that's why they understood it, and they had more wisdom than we do. We have all the knowledge in the world in our hands. We have no wisdom. Now, I'm not claiming to be some wise man. You actually have to be like Christ said. You have to be like wise as a child. You have to be childlike.
Hmm.
And so yeah. So maybe if I listened to myself now talking about all this 3 years ago, I'd probably turn off the podcast. I don't. I actually don't care. The world needs to hear this fucking message. A hundred.
Hmm.
I've never in my life, that meta character stuff. When I did that, I thought the world needed that, and that was great personal development.
Hmm.
The stuff that I've realized in the last year, I have just been trying to understand, how do I articulate this for the world? Like,
Yeah.
it has nothing to do with me. It's not about me. It's
Hmm.
like we need to stop fighting amongst ourselves. This is not the
Yeah.
battle. It's not.
No, and then I think you hit the nail on the head multiple times there, but I didn't want to disrupt your flow. Like for me, like I had a realization. My parents stayed married. There was a season when they struggled, and I saw them make it through it, and I'm eternally grateful for that. Um, my grandpa is like the patriarch. My grandpa, he had his issues in Mexico, and he's like, I don't want to live like this. So he converts to Christianity, and then he moves to America. And like from that, like I'm eternally grateful. Like he changed the course of my life, by those two decisions. So like my grandpa is my hero for that reason. Because he was like the curse breaker in our family, so to speak. And so I acknowledge that. And then my dad, he got the same thing. So we went to church. I wouldn't say we were like we never like studied the Bible together or anything like that, but we went to church, which was enough for me to see like, hey, not everybody gets this. And then so it was easy for me to trust a father I didn't see, because I had a father I could see who was good to me. And I can understand, other people's situation who come in where they don't have that. Like a lot of my friends, they didn't have their fathers around, or there was divorce or whatever. And so, they walked a different path than I did. Cause like once it was time for like dating time, it was like, I'm looking for wifey, or I'm not going to, mess around. And then I got married young, and then they kind of stayed and, did what, MTV says to do for a while. And, they're all married now, thank God. But I'm very much, like they talk about privilege. It's like, man, I want my kids to have all the privileges because I had them. I want my kids to grow up having these privileges so they can walk a path that God has called for them, not for, what somebody else or the media or the culture is trying to tell them to walk. It's like, no, I don't want that for my kids.
That's beautiful to hear. I think, yeah, you're right that when children don't have a good father, it's there's statistics that show if the father is not of strong spiritual beliefs, it's like catastrophic to the
Mm-hmm.
to a child. So as
Mm-hmm.
religious as my mother was, right, in my own experience, as religious as my mother was, I wasn't religious, and my
Mm-hmm.
father wasn't, or at least he wasn't outwardly. He didn't go to church. Now, later on, I found out after he passed now that he did believe in God, and so,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm actually hopeful that he's in heaven, and
Mm-hmm.
that he, but it definitely rings true in my own life, and I think that we as a society, because we have a crisis of fatherhood in general, that people either are not home, right? They're not in the household anymore. The home is broken, or they're just this disconnected
Yeah.
from being men, and then from being fathers.
Yeah,
So
because the world doesn't really require us to, right? Like we can sit at our computers and I used to be an athlete, so I'd work out and do all that whole thing, and then once I was done, it's like, well, what's really the point of going to go work out? Because like I don't want to be vain, like I'm not just trying to like be some like bodybuilder. Because before it was like there was a reason, right? Like I want to be good at playing my sport. Now it's just because of what. So I wouldn't say that I let myself completely go, because I kind of did, but it was never really intense or anything. And you could sit at your computer and the streets are safe. You have everything you need. Everything works, and I mean everything works. The cars work, the computer work, everything works. There's never like any kind of material dysfunction for the most part. And so it's like, yeah, like you don't really, like, my wife doesn't really need a man, right? Because everything is safe. But like you still need men, like, and I think that's why I was so encouraging, what you do. Like, I don't know all about the Aeon Con, but just a place where men can talk about these things, and people who have really thought deeply. Because I think there's a lot of men who are kind of like, well, where's my place in the society now that's so safe, that's so secure, where everything works, like that you don't have to protect me. Like you have soldiers, right? But they go off and they're not around, and they come back and they're feeling out of place. Where is a place for a man? But in talking to you and to talking to Jack, it's really like it's defending the culture. Like this isn't so much a physical battle. It's like they're defending the culture that we inherited from our heavenly Father, and then our forefathers. Like that's where.
yeah, and one of my more well, maybe one thing where is like a newer thought that I've had is, because I've been asking God, I'm like, am I supposed to, right? There's a lot of people like, we got to defend Western civilization, this and that. I don't know if that's actually what God wants us to do.
Mhm.
I think that at the core of it, we need to try to live as Christ lived,
Mhm.
and then whatever falls. Because I
Mhm.
don't know, right? Why do civilizations rise and fall?
Mhm.
I don't know, man. We could have been in the Roman Empire when they were Catholic and been like, "Hey, this thing can't fall," and it did.
Mhm.
So would we have given up? No. Like, I think we have to protect that. In my opinion, I love America, and I think the fact that people say Western civilization, that's not a culture. You got to be out of your mind. It's the greatest culture that's ever existed. And
Mhm.
I'm Hispanic, and I realize that. And there's all
Mhm.
beautiful parts of every culture,
Mhm.
but it's ridiculous that these people don't understand the political, economic things that make America unique. That that actually freed man. That's actually
Mhm.
why we have the Industrial Revolution, the 20th
Mhm.
century, everything, the internet, all of that, like, came out of the idea that man is free.
Mhm.
Period. Now,
Yeah.
there's bad history to that, right? There was slavery,
Mhm.
because man is imperfect. So
Right.
expecting him to be perfect period doesn't mean that we shouldn't demand more. And we did. We corrected that we had a system that's good enough that could correct slavery. Um, so the fact that we were willing to throw that out is incredibly dangerous and ignorant. And the fact that all these movements follow the pattern of communist
Mhm.
revolutions.
Yeah.
That's a fact of the matter. They follow the same way they pressure you to support is what they did in China. They
Yeah.
would they would humiliate you, right? It's called a struggle session. Go
And
look
the
that up. You
and the
don't know what
students and the students let it
same
too, right?
people that they don't put a black square on their Instagram. That's
Mhm.
called a struggle session. You're trying to use peer pressure to have a political opinion. It's gross. So, and nobody owes you for what occurred 400 years ago. I'm sorry. Like,
Yeah.
that's not the way the world works. And it's also, yeah, it also shows in some level another disconnect to Christ. Christ never, when Christ came, it was the opposite of an eye for an eye. That's actually one of the key learnings. He allowed himself to be crucified,
Hmm.
like and he won. This is what people don't like. Once I actually, I went I don't know how many years. It's amazing to me. I sat in Catholic churches for 20 years as a child, with Christmases and Christ is reborn, and that it never actually sunk into my brain, like that. I didn't sit there. I don't think people actually consider, hey, what if, just do the thought experiment. What if this actually occurred? What if God actually came himself, was born in a manger to a poor family as a child, helpless, to a human mother
Hmm.
and a stepfather, essentially,
Right.
and was born and spent 30 years where only thing that he did was serve those people as a carpenter and as a son. And then 3 years began proclaiming the truth and had prophesied in the Old Testament that he would
Mhm.
be crucified and would die and would resurrect. And then all of that occurred.
All of
Just
it did.
consider it. If you don't want to believe it, I don't actually care, because it's not going to be on me. It's not.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's on each of us. And I do care. I'm maybe being, I do
Yeah,
care. And actually,
I know what you mean. Yeah.
yeah,
Hopefully, everybody
I
knows
do.
what you mean. Like it's there. It's the truth. You can't
Yeah,
argue with
you
it.
can't force. And the beauty of it is, here's the beauty. Here's why I know that, here's the beauty. It's how much God loves his children. He allows for free will. It's like,
Hmm.
why does a father allow a child to make a mistake? That's ultimate form of love.
Hmm.
That's how much he loves. You know why bad things happen? Because he allows for free will.
Hmm.
That's, if you don't understand that freedom is love, I don't know what to tell you. It's the ultimate love. Giving someone the responsibility of their own life is the ultimate love. And then not only that, you would have died a sinner, and you would have been subject to the same punishment he was on that cross. And he took it all. He literally suffered. You
Hold on.
have the son. Yeah.
Can you repeat that? You said something like giving you the responsibility of your own life.
Well, what I'm saying is that God doesn't force you to believe in him. He's
Oh,
not
I know,
forcing
I
any of
understand that, but I've never heard it phrased that way. I thought it was beautiful that you could be loved so much that I'm giving you the responsibility of you because I love you so much. I've never heard that before. That's outstanding, Bill.
what does a good father do, right? You raise him, but then you're like, hey, he's got to learn on his own.
Mm-hmm.
And you trust them, and you put the
Mm-hmm.
faith that they're going to make the right decisions.
Yeah.
That's what God has done. And then look at what we have today. Imagine you were the father of people right now. You would probably be pretty. What God is currently is probably sorrowful, is how I would imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's probably sad if you would look at your own children and think to yourself, like, here's what I did, and
Uh-huh.
and here's how you're. But he still has faith, I would imagine.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's an undying love. The other beauty of it is, as many things, even if you're the person that went and you looted and you rioted, if
Mm-hmm.
you repent and ask for forgiveness right now, he will accept you point blank,
Mm-hmm.
period, with instantly. And that's what
Right.
people don't understand. That's all waiting right there at the cusp.
Right, and repenting, not just saying like, "Hey, I accept Jesus." It's like, no, you turn your heart towards God. That's repentance, where you turn from the direction that you were going, and now you're saying, you know what? Now God is my God. That's where my heart turns towards. Because I think people try to play with like little semantic stuff. It's like, oh, all I gotta do is say that I accept Jesus, and then I'm good. Like, no, your heart has to be. It's a whole heart thing. It's not
Yeah, no,
just your mouth.
you're hitting on a key point, which I had been, I think, spent 2020 trying to understand, which is, there's your will, which is the will of a sinner, right? All men are sinners. If you want to believe that, whatever, don't believe that. I do. If you look at Christ's life and you look at the Ten Commandments, every man is judged a sinner. So the only way, what was I going to say there? Lost my train of thought.
We're talking about repentance.
Damn, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, we're all sinners, and Damn, I had a point there. I can't remember.
My bad, man. I messed up your flow.
No, it's not. It's not you. It just fell at me. It will probably come to me. We keep talking.
Yeah. It's and then so we got about like 10 minutes left, right? Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
One thing that I did see that on one of your posts or on the book was that there's no joy-filled atheists. And I thought that was interesting. Because I have friends who are atheists and I don't they seem, they're nice people. I love them, but I never kind of put together that thought of like joy, because people will confuse happiness and joy, which are different things. Happiness is like, I think of like, you get the new thing and I'm happy because I have the new thing, and then once the newness of it dissipates, like I'm no longer happy, so I have to do a new thing to keep me in a state of happiness. Whereas for me, joy is an internal, that regardless of what circumstances are, if things are up or down, that I'm still able to have that joy. Now, like I'm not around like my friends who are atheists. I'm not around them 24/7. I'm not with them in their I'm around them when they're up or they're at work or whatever, like, so you can see like, hey man, he looks genuinely like in a good mood or happy. So what was it for you that you had that? Was it just because you were an atheist and you didn't feel like you ever really had joy, or was it the people who were around you that you saw like, hey, like these people seem like they're missing something that I have now, so I can see from before?
I think I said that, and I do have some friends that replied to me, and they were like, "Hey, I'm an atheist. I'm joyful." And I was like, "All right, there's exceptions." So maybe Twitter, you can sometimes say things that are definitive, but it's not 100% true. But maybe what I was getting at was like what I was talking about before. If you don't have access to the love of God, right, which actually changes you, right? So I think this is what I was getting at before. Mm-hmm. You can either live your life with your will as a flawed, sinful human being, mm-hmm. towards your will, and it will be ego driven, most likely, or you can live your life towards God's will. Mm-hmm. And then if you submit to God and you live to His will, now you get His love. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have that relationship, you unfortunately don't have access to that form of love, which robs you of some form of happiness. So that probably is the part that you can't have if you're an atheist. Mm-hmm. And it's there waiting, but you choose not to accept it, then it won't.
Well, that's like the door knocking, right? He's knocking at the door, but you got to open it. So like it's there for you, but it's for you to.
I think I tweeted that in that thread, which I said that the devil pursues, but you have to pursue God. And it comes to the same principle, right? God gives you free will. The devil, he actually wants to capture you. He wants you to worship yourself. He wants you to worship money, and he's not going to have you worship him. That's probably not his approach. He wants you to worship the material world. Mm-hmm. And then when he gets you there, you think that you're, a lot of Christianity even has been distorted, where it's all about, if you're a good Christian, you get all the riches. That's not Christianity. It's the furthest thing from it. Mm-hmm. God had all his apostles and all the martyrs of the Catholic Church, which is the main, the original church that spread Christianity across the world. Only one apostle did not die as a martyr. All of them suffered. When you suffer for Christ, you're the closest to Christ. So God doesn't promise any riches. It's because we live in a very abundant world that we would associate God loving you with material abundance.
Yeah,
God loves you, gives you abundance spiritually, 100%, and He might give you material abundance if it works towards His will.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to that, but I think the point of that, we live in such an abundant world that that it's just natural to think that if I do good things, then good things are going to keep on happening, or blessings will come my way. And yeah, there's a lot to that. I think that One of the other things that you had mentioned was the technology and concentration, which I thought was pretty fascinating, especially because, raising kids now, like they're giving like tablets like really early on. And like you could just see, like, even for me as a grown adult who didn't grow up with those things, now it's like, yeah, you got your phone. I go from phone, laptop, and I have like two laptops, so it's like constantly going from thing to thing to thing. That I think was one of the most observant things that you had there. Where did that come from for you? Was just, because you said you work in technology. Is that kind of what it was?
Technology, but that's, I'm just like everybody else, right? Wasting too much time on their technology devices. So the crazy part is that, like when I wrote the ebook, I did it like, I think I gave myself a month or a little more than a month, and like I had to be really strict with my time because I'm
Mm-hmm.
working full time. I'm a father, so I wrote this thing in like, a couple hours. I pop out like 10 pages. First 3 days, I think I spent like wrote nothing because I couldn't even concentrate, right? Because you go on a computer, you open Twitter, and then
Mm-hmm.
like, so it's like when you realize that if you could just force yourself to concentrate, the things that you could create,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not saying that what I created with the book in a month is some amazing accomplishment, but it was a taste in my mind of
Yeah.
like, if you can focus. And so the modern world, yeah, is now we're at a point where it's not allowing you to focus. If you
Yeah.
allow it. So you have to, at no point in history has it been more important, and it's always been important, but now it's even more, is to have self-control. If you're
Yeah.
a man, that means you cannot use the internet to go online and view pornography.
Porn. Yeah.
If you do that, you're fucked.
Yeah.
You are fucked.
Mm-hmm.
In like in multiple ways. Number one,
Yeah.
you're so, and that's probably the biggest distraction for men and young men. And then the rest of it, the whole internet is this whole stream of, instant gratification.
Right.
And now, and I indulge in it. I'm on Twitter, so,
Yeah.
but I have to make myself, acknowledge that you got to control that. And if
You
you
know
can
what's cool?
control that, you actually now can accomplish a lot.
Yeah, I'm the same way, man. I grew up playing video games. I don't play them now, but I probably spend more time on like social media than I did before, because Twitter's been really cool just because I've been able to connect with people. Like I would never have met you. I wouldn't have met Jack. I mean, I spoke to, Ed Lattimore, Coach Joe Hart, like, all these people. I was like, oh man, like these are some cool people. And I think that's why, before we wrap up, like the conference, like I'm gonna have to check it out, because that sounds outstanding. Because what I think now that I've realized, like I went to some conferences, and then so I have two guys that I speak to every single week for an hour. We speak every single week, and so we kind of have the same mindset, values on things. So I'm able every week to speak to my buddies, say what's on my mind, no filter, and it's great. And then, but now people are isolated, right? And but we're all over the country, but people are isolated, and people have these thoughts. So you can be physically next to somebody, but they don't share your values, they don't share your point of view. There's really no, like, people can feel isolated from that standpoint. So when you were talking about the conference, like I think there's people who are out there who are feeling isolated, especially now, that if they were to see you, like, how do what it sounds like, this thing where it's like, oh, I have something to look forward to. People who are seeing the same things that I'm seeing, that I'm not the one that's crazy, especially now, right? Because it's like this, there's like this, hey, you got to comply with this thing, and if you're not complying, then you're ostracized. It's like, no, there's other people who love God, who love their country, they love their families, they're concerned about things, but this is what they see, and other people see it too. Like, okay, there's other people out here. I'm not alone, because that's a terrible thing, I think, to feel alone. I mean, I think sometimes you have to take a stand and be alone, but if it's not necessary, it's like, hey, there's other people who see this too. Like, all right, cool. I'm encouraged, right? Because there's lots of things to be discouraged about, but I always like to look forward to the thing like, okay, what is encouraging me? If I need to be encouraged for this minute, then that's the minute that I need. If I need to be encouraged for the hour, then that's the hour that I need. If I need encouraged for the day, then this is the day. Like, okay, I can do it.
Yeah, no, I think you're hitting on something that's really important for men and women, but specifically for men is you have to have other men that you can talk to and share things with. And I think the whole modern world wants to get rid of all that, and
Mm-hmm.
it does that at its own detriment. What it does is it leaves only the ill-intentioned men,
Mm-hmm.
and it's yeah. So one of the big things for me is I have people online, right, through Twitter, just like you, that I've met, and like Jack is one of them, and
Mm-hmm.
there's Carlos Deval is another, and Tanner Guzzi is another. People that I've become good friends with, and that it allows me to grow. And I think they would look at it the same way as a man. You have to do that, and you have to do it online, and you should, because it's use the technology for good. And you should do it in your own community. And so, and that's by doing things that right. Going to the gym, learning things that you should be learning, where you're going to meet other people that are like minded.
Mm-hmm.
And because the world is we're being forced to polarize. That's the problem. Like,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, the world is trying to pit, right? And politicians are trying to do this, and the media is trying to pit one people against another. And so you have to find the people that are gonna that have their head on straight,
Mm-hmm.
and that believe in, like you said, that have that are good people is the bottom line. And I think and that's huge, because especially with all this quarantine crap, and you have to have that outlet. So I definitely feel a new urge around that. It's probably time for me to do another conference, and it will probably be something like from chaos to order, or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, what do you need to do spiritually, physically, financially to get your own house in order? The world can
Yeah.
go, can keep going crazy, but
Yeah.
you have control over your own life, your own body, your own mind. And how do we use that to thrive and live good lives
Yeah, because
in
I
God's
mean,
will?
for me, like I always tell my kids, it's like when you guys go out, it could be crazy. Things can be out of order, but when we come home, like this is our sanctuary. We love each other. We treat each other well, because this is a place where we can rest. There's no fear here in our home. We I pray for my kids every night. Like this is what we aim for. Mommy and daddy aren't perfect, but this is what we're uniting under. We love God. That's it. We're coming up on here on the hour, Bill. So before we wrap up, was there any kind of last thing you wanted to say before we land this bad boy?
The other thing I'll share, and it might sound random, but it's benefited me tremendously, right? It's related to the whole religious thing. Is So I'm Catholic, and I've remained Catholic, but if people are Catholic, or if they're curious, go search on Google the city that you live in, and traditional Latin Mass. This is the type of Mass that existed for hundreds of years, and it's in Latin, not Spanish, like traditional Latin. And it is one of the most like, if the person does it right, it's called a High Latin Mass, where they sort of like Gregorian chants.
Mm-hmm.
And I go every week now. I go to one that's about 40 minutes from me, and I bring my kids and my wife, and it's like a reset on the week. And the world has
Mm-hmm.
continued to go crazy with all this bullshit,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm going to my mass every
Mm-hmm.
every weekend, and it clears my mind. And it's just a beautiful mass. It's the priest literally faces the altar almost the entire mass.
Mm-hmm.
It's a reverence to God that is missing from the modern world, and you find it in the tradition of, maybe there's other traditions, but this is one that exists in the Catholic Church,
Mm-hmm.
has existed for hundreds of years. For whatever reason, the Catholic Church has veered away from it, but it's if you're looking to to feel like, well, what is it to believe a God, and what's that experience? Go to one of those, and and bring your family and have that reset, and it'll start to bring order to your life. That's been my experience.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much, Bill, for coming on today, man. This, like, I know we have an hour, but I feel like we could have gone another hour, but we'll have to do this again.
Yeah, for sure, brother. I appreciate it.
So again, his name is Bill Masur, rhymes with laser. He is teaching men how to build their character. The book of Uncomfortable Truths is available on Gumroad, but you could also get it on his Twitter. His Twitter is at Eternal in Mind. Again, Bill Masur, thanks so much for coming on to the show. Again, if you are following on or listening on iTunes, please go ahead and subscribe and comment if you're enjoying it. If you're seeing it on Spotify, please follow along. Thanks so much to my guest today, Bill Masur, for coming on. Have a good one, everybody.
Thanks a lot, Bill.